Hello, everybody. Chris McMeeking with Mobilely here, doing my introduction to TalkBack, one of the primary and probably most popular assistive technology on the Android ecosystem. Let's go. All right, so about Mobilely, my name is Chris McMeeking. I'm a native mobile accessibility engineer and accessibility advocate. If you want to hear more about me, see the intro video to this channel for information on my background and my experiences in accessibility. I am on a mission to post a video every day leading up to Global Accessibility Action Day. Maybe not every day, a video per day. I have about 20 to 25 videos that I want to do on native mobile accessibility, and they all kind of connect with each other and bounce back and forth between iOS and Android. Around Global Accessibility Action Day, I plan to publish an iOS and Android interpretation of web content accessibility guidelines. The videos leading up to this are meant to inform why such an interpretation is necessary. One of the things about the native mobile accessibility ecosystem is that there's a lot of misleading and confusing information out there. And a lot of that misleading information comes from the technical application of how web content accessibility guidelines relates to the platform. And so I am working on a set of interpretations of those guidelines and getting feedback from various industry experts. But in the meantime, I want to post these videos so that we can kind of build up to understanding why things are so difficult. Because what I found, especially in accessibility, is frequently the underlying motivations for challenges and understanding them is more important than the solution, because there are frequently multiple solutions and we want to pick the best one, the most accessible one, and we can't pick the most accessible solution unless we understand the motivations for the various solutions and the driving factors behind what may make those decisions better or equivalent in a given situation. And finally, why are we starting with TalkBack? A fundamental understanding of assistive technologies and their users is necessary. So we will start here. We will start with the assistive technologies. I will talk a little bit about the users. This is meant to be a gentle introduction to TalkBack. Here's how you use it. Here's some advanced usage. I will also do separately a testing video. So you're going to get actually 4 TalkBack and maybe once we're over the intro to assistive technologies, maybe just 2 switch control videos. But for TalkBack, I want to do intro to TalkBack, testing with TalkBack, intro to VoiceOver, testing with VoiceOver. And so that's what you can expect over the next couple of days, is those deep dive into how certain users interact with the platform, starting with an introduction. Overview. Obviously, we need to be able to turn on our assistive technology. So we're going to talk about how to turn TalkBack on. We need to know how to use TalkBack. There are a bunch of different ways that TalkBack users interact with TalkBack. When we're talking about the eventual testing video come up, you're going to see that these kind of 4 bullet points fit different user personas. Touch to explore, basic gestures, structural navigation, advanced gestures are all used by different people, different users, different personas for different purposes. And that is going to be a theme that there are a lot of organizations, when they are designing for and testing for TalkBack, they typically only have one user in mind. And there are actually many different personas and users that I think of when I'm building for TalkBack. Finally, we'll do a discussion of various configurations. One of the things that's really important about the Android accessibility ecosystem, and that people who are passionate about Android love, is the idea that I have a lot of configurability available on the platform. I can download custom launchers. There's tons of settings available. Material U is a really new cool thing coming out. See how hard that hits, still tracking that. But Android is all about personalization and configurability. And that is true at the assistive technology layer as well. Honestly, for some, it's a bit overwhelming. I will go through and talk those about those configurations and maybe some of the users that use those configurations. And throughout, I will likely point out minor accessibility issues. I will do that a lot when we're doing the testing with TalkBack. I'm going to try and keep this an introduction, but I can't help it. And that's helpful. There are pieces of the ecosystem related to TalkBack that starting to familiarize yourself with can help you understand. When we get to what are deeper lessons, it can make, if I start casually introducing those things like the concept of name, role, value, it can make those deeper lessons more consumable. So I am going to be doing a little bit of accessibility analysis all the time. Part of that is me as a TalkBack user. That's the mode that I'm in. I'm a tester more than a user, and that's important. All right, so turning TalkBack on, let's go. So I am going to keep my slides in the background, but at the same time, I am going to bring up Visor. I'm going to tuck myself over here. I want the outline. I want you to be able to see the outline. But more importantly, I want you to be able to see what is going on my screen. All right. So one thing I will point out, and I will cover how to do this in my deep dive on testing, but look here, I have this little circle in the middle of my screen. It's on my near my Instagram icon right now. That is where my finger is pointing. In fact, if I touch with multiple fingers, you can still see all three of those fingers. That is going to help you understand the interactions that I am doing on my phone. I don't want to have to hold my phone up like this all the time. It's not natural for me. And one of the things about TalkBack is that its gesture detection isn't great. Honestly, if I try to do that style of demonstration, I'm going to miss a lot. And so I'm going to keep my phone down here, but you have this, you can see what I am interacting with all the time. So, all right, so let's go settings. I'm turning on TalkBack, settings, accessibility. You see this accessibility menu, look for the screen readers thing here, and go to TalkBack, and then we just turn it on. If you are turning TalkBack on for the first time, it will take you through a little tutorial. Cool. Tutorials are nice. If you are not familiar with TalkBack at all, click really hard on the turn off or be ready to practice. Anytime I'm sitting next to an engineer and introducing them to TalkBack for the first time, they generally end up in a space where they have to ask me how to turn TalkBack off. One of the things that you can do is enable this TalkBack shortcut. This can be helpful. So the TalkBack shortcut allows me, I can hold my volume buttons here instead. Really, really useful as an accessibility engineer, as a tester, or as someone who relies on TalkBack to read the occasional paragraph of text because they struggle reading large blobs of characters. Hold my volume, both my volume buttons for a couple seconds, TalkBack is on, push my finger here, let the text get read out, turn TalkBack off. This is something that I have actually seen users do. As a tester, it's a really, really convenient way to turn TalkBack on and off. All right, so another thing to introduce you about what's going on. Normally, and I will turn my volume up for a second so that you can hear this, the way that TalkBack functions is, notice I have this little accessibility volume guy. This is my volume, and it gives me a new volume thing here, and this is my accessibility volume. I am going to turn this all the way up for a second. 100% accessibility slider. Notice volume set to 90%. I hope you can hear that. If not, I'm sorry. Navigate up button. Navigate up button. Notice that this little what is it called? Toast message down here is the text that Android is speaking to me, right? As a blind user, I close my eyes, I can hear what is shared to me. And this is the whole point of TalkBack, right? As someone who can't read the words on the screen or see the images on the screen, who struggles with that visual perception, I use TalkBack to read the information on the screen out to me. Right. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn my volume down, but notice that
Use TalkBack on switch.
What is said is shared down here in this thing. So I'm going to turn down the volume so that it's not disruptive. I will share precisely those announcements that are popping up at the bottom of the screen with you. That way you can hear me talk and I can share the important information coming from TalkBack. I will repeat it verbatim when I am doing that, right? So let me turn TalkBack down now. All right, so now my accessibility volume is totally off, and you are relying on me to reiterate what TalkBack is saying. You can follow that voice, that announcement if you want. When it is meaningful to what I am talking about, I will announce it for TalkBack. That way we don't have the interruptions. It's also really, really useful as a tester. I'm getting into too much. You could take a screenshot with that little thing up there, and then developers know that you weren't making up that announcement, right? Because the developers like to push back as much as they can. It's their job. They want to remain efficient. Send them a screenshot with the speech overlay up there. Hard to argue, right? Really, really useful. Also useful for demonstrations like I'm doing right now. Turning on TalkBack is device dependent. Not all devices are the same. This is a theme in the Android ecosystem. Sometimes it's caused by operating system version. Sometimes it's caused by manufacturer. For example, Samsung voice assistant. Voice assistant and TalkBack are heavily related. I believe voice assistant is essentially a version of TalkBack that Samsung modified themselves. If not, a lot of the accessibility APIs are interrelated. They're very, very similar technologies. They function very, very similarly. There are subtle differences in the way things are announced. Not important for introduction, very important when we're talking about testing with TalkBack. But just know if you're trying to follow along, TalkBack, voice assistant, similar enough for today's video. All right, so okay, so we are back. Sorry, I just had to get my screen back up. All right, so let's talk about the different ways we can use TalkBack now. Okay, so touch to explore. Touch to explore is something that I would expect to see from users who have partial vision. Users who struggle to read paragraphs, large blobs of text, like I said, right? These may be permanent TalkBack users. Your users with partial vision probably have TalkBack on all the time, but they don't need to rely on that swipe right, swipe left navigation. If you're familiar with TalkBack already, I'll get to swipe right, swipe left a little bit if you're not. Someone who can see vague shapes on the screen may be a TalkBack user, but they are just relying on TalkBack for that readout of information. They're not relying on it for structural navigation. They're not relying on those swipe right, swipe left gestures. They are literally using it so that they can do poke, read that paragraph to me. Really, really important subset of users. This is somebody that we want to consider when we are marking up, when we're coding our components for accessibility. Basically, the idea here is I put my finger on the screen. Oh, hey, look, there's an accessibility problem here. This is giving me information. It's making me feel comfortable. It's making me feel like I'm in the right spot. This title is doing a lot of that. I don't agree with the decision to make this image decorational, not TalkBack focusable. This information is helpful here. At the very least, remember that touch to explore person, this touch to explore user, at the very least, it could be grouped with the title. There's some technical challenges to making that happen. The information, if we're saying that the information in the TalkBack bar is the same as the information that this image is, let me focus it. Why isn't there just a quick TalkBack description here grouped with this thing, or even grouped down below? It doesn't make sense. Let me focus it. I can see it. I can put my finger on it. I can't focus it. Bad. All right, so again, dragging my finger down, I run into use TalkBack, I run into options, TalkBack shortcut, hold volume keys, double tap to activate settings. We did something a little unfriendly here to our touch to explore users. We didn't group this switch together. I'm assuming that this is a separate actionable zone. There we go. We could have grouped that together and used contextual actions. Not really sure why we didn't get there with testing with TalkBack in more detail. But yeah, I mean, the idea with touch to explore, I drag my finger around the screen, whatever is under my finger gets focused, and then I do, let's say that I wanted to turn TalkBack off if you're stuck. I drag my finger to use TalkBack. I double tap the screen wherever. I do not have to target that thing. That's a really important bit of TalkBack. I do not have to double tap in any particular spot. I double tap the screen anywhere. Stop TalkBack, cancel button. I do in fact want to cancel this. I focus cancel. I double tap, done. Touch to explore. I actually did that with swipe gestures. Let me go back. I drag, I put my finger on it. I let go. I double tap. Touch to explore. Cool. All right, let's talk about basic gestures. So basic TalkBack navigation. If we're not using touch to explore, here we are entering people who see poorly enough where they are not comfortable using that. Although to be honest, people in the power user category, one of the differences between mobile accessibility and web accessibility is in web accessibility, our primary input mechanism is the keyboard. We hit tab, we use the arrow keys to move focus around. In Android and in fact, in native mobile devices in general, our primary input mechanism is the screen. And my ability to here, let me try this, right? So as a power user who has been blind for a long period of time, maybe my whole life, maybe long enough to be really, really comfortable with using these technologies, like myself in this case, I can close my eyes and I can get the idea of locality. I bet I can find that that TalkBack switch just by dragging my thumb around the screen. And I think I am on the TalkBack switch right now. I'm going to open my eyes, boom, locality. I closed my eyes, I use it that. I was looking at the screen right before, so it was a little easier than it might have been otherwise. But the point here is, even as a blind TalkBack user, this touch to explore thing, something I might use once in a while, something where I can get used to the idea of locality, especially on these controls that expand the entire screen. That's one of the reasons I don't like Google's decision here to separate these two controls. We have, look, I'm dragging my finger down. If these two controls were grouped, even I, as a blind TalkBack user, could drag my finger up and down and understand the entirety of this screen. Contextual actions would have come into play here, would have been nice. All right, sorry, I'm jumping ahead to testing, I'm getting excited. Let's talk about basic gestures, my bad. All right, so basic gestures. As a blind TalkBack user, I am going to use these kind of basic gestures. Swipe right, swipe left, double tap. Swipe right acts as the tab on the key on the keyboard that moves focus forward. See, I'm swiping right, Focus will jump back when you get to the top of the screen, right? So I'm swiping right and focus is moving forward. I swipe left, focus moves backwards. Goes through the same thing. When you're doing testing, you want to make sure that those are the same order. We'll talk about that more when we get to testing. Sorry, I like to jump ahead. Swipe left, focus goes to places. Double tap to activate, right? So I'm swiping. I want to find that use TalkBack on switch. There we go, right? I was going through settings, no. On shortcut settings switch, no. TalkBack shortcut, hold volume keys, double tap to activate, no. Options heading, no. Use TalkBack on switch. There we go. Another alternative way of getting to that use TalkBack on switch. I double tap, stop will stop TalkBack out of list. All right, so I swipe right, cancel button, stop button. I don't want to turn off TalkBack. I swipe left, I double tap, activated it. There we go, right? Swipe right, swipe left, double tap. This is the primary way I think that TalkBack is probably used. Touch to explore is also really common. I think of those as equivalent input modalities for TalkBack. Touch to explore and swipe right and swipe left, both things that I see people use all the time. All right. Oh, I'm screwing up because I'm not used to. All right. So structural navigation. Let's talk about structural navigation. So when we see here, we have this options heading, about TalkBack heading, which, by the way, I am picky about accessibility, but let's also talk about some good things. I really like that these are the only two headings on this screen. They Google picked the perfect headings for this screen here. A+. The fact that this is not a heading is actually also really good. This is a title. We have 2 section headings. How do we use them? Are headings just spoken out as headings? No, headings are really cool. So all right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my 3 fingers. I'm going to swipe down, and there's going to be this menu that pops up, and it would happen to be headings right away. But look, all right. So as I'm swiping up with 3 fingers here, lines, words, characters, spoken language, speech rate, windows, links, controls, headings. We're on headings, right? 3-finger swipe is going to change my navigation category. And what the navigation category is, all right, so we were swiping right and swiping left before. I'm going to swipe up and down. Swiping up and down is going to navigate by whatever I have set for my navigation category. So right now, my navigation category is set to headings, which means when I swipe up, I'm going to skip to the next heading, options. I'm going to swipe up again. No previous heading. There's no other heading available. When I swipe up a 3rd time, it is going to go ahead and loop back around, right? So I went from options, I swiped up, no previous heading. I swipe up, about TalkBack heading. Options heading, no previous heading, about TalkBack heading. All of that by swiping up. Now I'm going to do the same thing swiping down. I feel like we all know what to expect at this point. I swipe down, no next heading. I swipe down, options heading. I swipe down, about TalkBack heading. I swipe down, no next heading. Structural navigation. There's a bunch of different modalities that I can use for this. Paragraphs, I can go through paragraphs. If I swipe down, notice that I have this big, long, kind of long-winded bit of text here. I can navigate it by paragraph. Paragraph navigation is really important. We don't want to force people to swipe right through each of these little groupings of text. That becomes painful when you're talking about designing a TalkBack experience and coding for a TalkBack experience. How we group things is important, but that we build the content description for whatever thing we are grouping properly so that we still have some of that structure in place is also really important. One of the things that I've seen developers write, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, kind of 8 different groupings in here. Something that I've seen is developers building that with individual text views and forcing people to swipe right through it. And then I'm like, hey, fix that. And instead of providing the proper structured text in that text view, what they do is they group it with a content description, which is fine, it works. But what we want to do then is make sure that that content description has at least some of that structural information. Specifically, we don't want comma separators, we want paragraph separators in that content description so that when I focus this thing, I can put my navigation, my structural navigation thing into paragraphs mode, and I can swipe down. Swipe right or left to move between items. Double tap to activate, drag to press value keys, settings. It was doing it before I've swiped down too many times, or I'm on the wrong navigation mode. Here we go, paragraphs. I swipe down. When TalkBack is on, it provides spoken feedback so that you can use your device, yada, 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 first paragraph. How to use TalkBack, second paragraph. Swipe right or left to move between items. Notice that each of these list items is considered a separate paragraph. That's really important. We talk about list semantics. The fact that these are all individual is really important. And now I'm out. I broke it. I was navigating by paragraphs. TalkBack in the Android ecosystem is a little quirky now and then, and that's okay. The people who have selected an Android device are used to that. You kind of exchange quirkiness for configurability. I appreciate the quirkiness, and I certainly appreciate the configurability, right? Paragraphs mode. There's lots of other modes. I don't want to dig into what all the other modes. In fact, now that we've kind of seen each of those modes work, what the other modes do is self-explanatory. I'll go through them again. Headings, controls, the ability to skip to the structural controls. Not everything that you can click is a control. Not all text is a heading, right? Not all text is a structural landmark. Not all actionable things are an actionable landmark. We want to focus the controls, and the controls here, again, the decisions that Google is making in their coding of these components is really good. They have picked absolutely the correct controls. My use TalkBack switch, my on shortcut setting switch. Being a little picky here, we have TalkBack shortcut settings. I wish those texts were linked together. We'll dive into TalkBack testing in detail later. Not getting picky. Let's keep going. Structural navigation, really, really important. I feel like we understand what structural navigation is now. All right. So we did basic gestures. Sorry, I'm having a hard time navigating my PowerPoint in this way. Structural navigation, advanced configuration. Okay, TalkBack and Android in general is a very configurable platform. I mentioned that I was doing these quickly. It actually says is a very configuration platform. Typo. I'm cruising through these. I probably fixed that sentence and forgot to fix that. My bad. But TalkBack is very configurable. In fact, that is a theme amongst users who, trying to ditch notifications. No, cancel, leave me alone. That is a theme on Android, is that Android users appreciate configurability. Android and Google appreciate giving them that configurability. Does that mean that it doesn't have as polished of an experience as Apple and iOS does in a lot of cases? Yes, of course it does. The tighter of a box you put somebody in, the prettier that box is going to look on average. Are there good and bad applications on both platforms? Yes. The tendency for Apple applications is to have those polished experiences. And for people who appreciate and want that, that's great. The tendency for Android is to be a little more techy, a little more nerdy, a little more configurable. And as an Android user myself, I appreciate that. And the same thing goes for the assistive technology users on the platform. Assuming that an individual with a disability wants a polished experience is a bad assumption. I know lots of users with disabilities who appreciate the same things about Android that I do, and that is fine. Right. And so what I want to do is talk you through what is actually a pretty daunting list of configurations, because the users that care to dive into those configurations and set up their device, power users, can get a lot out of these configurations. I didn't list them here in the PowerPoint presentation. There's too many for me to add notes about. If I get the ask for it, honestly, I would rather write that all out in a blog post. I feel like that would be, if the written version of this is what you want, a blog post is what this would require, because there's so many of them, and what they do is so complicated. I can't capture those notes in a PowerPoint presentation in a meaningful way. So let's just dive in. All right. This is a list view. One of the things that you're going to notice is that None of these things are buttons. This is fine. They all say double tap to activate. They are actionable list view items. Minor testing note that I wanted to point out. All right, so the first section we come to is audio, text-to-speech settings. One of the important things to note, especially if you're a tester, is the idea that different text-to-speech settings, whether that goes down to your text-to-speech engine, which you can configure here. Here's your preferred engine. I use the default, but you can customize your text-to-speech engine. You can customize the language. Right now, I have it set to use the system language. I'm an English speaker and only an English speaker, so I am not going to change that. But you don't have to use the system language for your TalkBack feedback, which is interesting and something that is actually pretty challenging to code for correctly. We need to make sure that our strings are localized properly and pulled from the correct places and all of that. Otherwise, we can essentially have forced everyone to, quote, use the system language instead of having this flexibility between having the system language and their TalkBack language be different. And that is really, really important and has a lot to do with how you code your components. Speech rate, power TalkBack users will have this cranked up as high as possible. People who have had severely blurred vision, legal blindness for their entire lives, or for a significant period of time, I swear, have superhuman hearing. If I turn this up much past 50%, I can't even hear all the words. I don't know how they get information with the speech rate cranked all the way up. Do it sometime, listen to it. It's nuts. Mucho respect for people who hear well enough to filter out meaningful information at a high speech rate. Pitch just allows you to set a different tone. I don't play with it. Both of these, honestly, I just leave at default. I turn down my volume. I use that notification that notification thing to talk to me when I see this little toast thing down here. This is where I get my information. I am almost always using it as a tester, and as a tester, when we get there, that thing is really important because it allows us to get a little more information. There's subtle pauses from the text-to-speech engine when there are commas there. There are also subtle pauses that come from TalkBack and its organization of information, and identifying the difference between those pauses is very difficult. And so the little notification helps me. I do want to point out a minor thing that frustrates me here. 15% speech rate slider, speech rate, this green box around both. Why do we have this duplicate announcement? This isn't necessary. These are one control. There's a label for the control. Group them together, make this adjustable on its own right. Use the parent view. Let me adjust the thing. Don't make me focus both of these. On such a small view, that's a pretty trivial bit of feedback. On a larger view with more controls, that could really drive somebody nuts hearing that duplicate announcement constantly. All right, verbosity. So a bunch of verbosity settings. I actually have lost track of the specifics of what all of these do. It's impossible to know everything about all of these different configurations. That's why they're configurations. That's why they're personal. People use the things that they want and they ignore the things that they don't. Speak usage hints. You can turn off that double tap to activate, or the customization that developers can do to those usage hints. You can have it turned on or not. Speak list and grid info. There is information that comes from recycler views, from list views. Ultimately, it's from a class called collection item info. You can have this spoken or not. This is actually a really common thing to turn off, but that's unfortunate. The reason it's a really common thing to turn off is because most applications get it wrong, and it's meaningless. And like I said, that's unfortunate. And we'll dig into that more when we're talking about testing and coding for TalkBack. Always speak number of list items. If you turn off your list and grid info, maybe you want to know how many items are there. Speak element type for focused items. In accessibility, there's this concept of name, role, value. Let's say that I have a switch that turns on the lights, right? Name, the lights, role, the switch, value, on or off. Name, role, value. By separating things into name, role, and value, an assistive technology can configure the order and the manner in which those are shared. I can turn off whether or not I want the type even spoken to me at all. Maybe I'm comfortable enough with just double tapping and that having the type information. I am such a power user. I have used all of the applications and I'm comfortable exploring new applications with TalkBack that I don't need the extra information, and I would rather just get that quick value announcement or value announcement. Oops. I can turn off various pieces of announcements. That's why it's so important to code components correctly. We want to make sure that we allow people to turn that information off if they don't want it. We want to make sure that it is in the right place. We have to code components correctly. We can't just go and use TalkBack without ignoring these settings and expect that that information we hacked into the name content description that has the word button in it. We have frustrated a user by not respecting and putting the information in the proper place. Speak system windows, speak notification when screen is off, use pitch changes, speak deleted letters in a higher pitched voice. If I'm going through and I am typing on an edit text field, if I backspace, there's a little pitch inflection so that I know I deleted a key. Sorry, that sounded ridiculous. That's what that does. Speak letters with examples. When you select keyboard keys or navigate by character, you'll hear an example along with each letter, like H, hotel. If I'm using my keyboard, M and N are really close to each other and they both sound familiar. M for mom, N for, I can't think of a nanny. Keyboard echo on screen, characters and words, keyboard echo, physical keyboard, characters and words. What do I want my keyboard to echo to me when I am typing? Capital letters, say capital. Do I know that that thing has been capitalized or not? Miscellaneous, speak element IDs for unlabeled buttons. If I am going through and I have a button that has not been labeled, odds are that the ID that that button is associated with is going to be reasonably meaningful for the context of that button, right? So I can speak the element ID instead of speaking unlabeled, and maybe I can infer information. The need for that configuration to exist is actually kind of sad. Speak punctuation and symbols. Do I want commas to be read out loud as commas, or do I just want those subtle pauses? This is a really good configuration to use if you are testing, because knowing whether a pause between the word button is coming from a developer who has hacked something into a content description, or whether that pause is coming from the operating system is good, right? Speak punctuation and symbols, great configuration. All right, where was I? I was at text, I was at verbosity. Okay, sound and vibration. Vibration feedback. When I am swiping right, there's a little shake that my device does. Maybe that irritates somebody. They shut it off. Audio ducking. Audio ducking. Decrease other audio volume while speaking. I am listening to music and a notification pops up and I get the content of that notification. Does the music get softer when that is read out to me or not? Does the music get softer when I am exploring or not? Does that audio duck into the background, or am I left to try and decipher the audio at the same volume? Sound feedback. I'm not sure what sound feedback is actually. I'm assuming it's talking about little haptic sounds that happen. There's little blips and bleeps when you enter list views and stuff. I'm assuming that's what it's talking about. Sound feedback volume is a percentage of the normal volume. Honestly, I might turn this back up to 100% and listen for some of those things. I think in Apple, I am more contextually aware of those things. I am going to go ahead and say match speech volume for those and see if I could pick up on the intricate details of exactly what those sound feedbacks are. Customized gestures. TalkBack is insane in the ability that it gives you to customize. So let's read through the different gestures that we have. First, you can practice gestures. You can reset gesture settings. There is a default for this, but I use that, but the different configurations and the different stuff is cool. All right, so swipe up, move, navigation, focus, backward, or adjust reading control up. Move navigation, we've already practiced this, right? Move to that structural navigation. Swipe up, swipe down, swipe left, swipe right. 99% of people leave this alone. I've literally never seen anybody who changes those. Now here's some more advanced gestures. Swipe up, then down. Do this, up, down, down, up, left, right, left. Swipe up, then down, previous reading control, swipe down, then up, next reading control. That's actually right now configured to do the same thing as my 3-finger gesture. I'm switching between those navigation categories. Swipe left, then right, scroll back, swipe right, then left, scroll forward. One of the things that you can do as a TalkBack user, notice I can swipe right and TalkBack focus will push down the scroll area. But another thing that I can do is I can forcibly scroll the screen by doing this quick. And that's really important because sometimes maybe we want to put in an accessibility delegate that doesn't have that focus thing happening, right? That doesn't do that forcible thing, and maybe we just want it to be scrollable. This is a potential solution for an infinite carousel, for example, might be to not allow TalkBack focus to go forward, but instead say, hey, if you want more items, scroll the view. Airbnb has a lot of carousels. That maybe they want a special accessibility delegate around their carousels that goes swipe right, swipe left, that kind of stuff. That's how you do that. Those accessibility delegates that do those things, those are actually pretty complicated to code, by the way. All right. One finger angle. There are so many gestures. One of the problems that TalkBack users have is that the gesture detection is a little finicky. The reason it's finicky is because Android is trying to do a lot for you, and those power users configure all these gestures and they get a lot of powerful use out of them. All right, so swipe up then left. All right, so basically I am going to do this. Boom, I'm home, right? That was an angle gesture, and that allowed me to go do that go home action immediately, which is really powerful. Being able to go straight home is something that I do on a regular basis. For me, that's kind of swipe up from the bottom, right? All right, so let's go back. I got to get back, go to my settings. We are only 1/3 of the way down this list. This is nuts. All right, so now I'm just going to start cruising through these. We understand there are complicated gestures you can perform and you can configure them to do things. So I have the various angle gestures that I can do. Swipe up, then left, swipe up, then right, open TalkBack menu, swipe down, then left, back, the back action. Back action is really important in Android. As a developer, tracking your back stack and making sure that the back stack is doing the appropriate thing is really important, because assistive technologies have their own way of doing that back action. Swipe down, then right, open TalkBack menu. Swipe left, then up, overview. Swipe left, then down, screen search. Swipe right, then up, start voice command. Swipe right, then down, notifications. 2-finger gestures. Tap with 2 fingers, pause or resume speech. Double tap with 2 fingers, play or pause media. Double tap and hold with 2 fingers, start or end selection mode. Triple tap with 2 fingers, read from next item. There's some grayed out ones here. I'm not sure why they are grayed out. They are completely inactive for me though. I'm not sure about that one. I might go in and report back on that later. Tap with 3 fingers, open TalkBack menu. I actually am going to dive into this one real quick because it's really important. All right, so let's go home. How do we go home? Up left. Boom, home. Now I'm going to tap with 3 fingers. I am on this YouTube TV thing. And remember, if I am on my launcher, one of the things that I can do, let's turn TalkBack off real quick. I can click and hold, and I can drag up to here. This is something that I would not expect most TalkBack users to do. Even those kind of blurred vision, partially sighted TalkBack users, this is not something that I would expect them to do, but it is something that I can do with this icon. How do we account for TalkBack users and their ability to do that? All right, so focus is on that same YouTube TV icon. I'm going to take 3 fingers and I'm going to tap on the screen. Brings up this contextual menu, right? A lot of this contextual menu is stuff that's determined by TalkBack, but the actions are provided by the developer. The developer says these actions are associated with this control. Hey, TalkBack, here are some strings and the actions to perform. I'm going to double tap. It brings up this contextual actions menu, shortcuts and notifications, remove, uninstall. That thing that I was going to be able to do by tapping and moving up, cancel, uninstall in the contextual actions menu. Really, really great design here by Google in using contextual actions for these types of things. Really, really good call. All right, so let's go back. Accessibility, let's go back. TalkBack. Honestly, I think we covered all of the important things to cover under gestures. Customize menus. Let's go in here. Customize TalkBack menu. To use the TalkBack menu, tap the screen with 3 fingers. You can also swipe up then right or swipe down then right. So there's all sorts of different ways you can open that contextual action menu. Customize reading controls. To use the reading controls, swipe up with 3 fingers. I think you're starting to understand how complex of an assistive technology TalkBack really is. And when we get to the engineering parts of how we test for TalkBack and the manner in which we test for TalkBack and why, and we might want to use switch control testing for some of these things instead, TalkBack is an immensely, immensely complicated assistive technology. And honestly, most of the time that I see, that I go into an organization where I'm teaching them how to test, all they're really doing is that kind of swipe right, swipe left testing. And that's a really, we're only really testing for 1 or 2 buckets of user personas if all we're doing is swipe right, swipe left, and looking for headings, right? And does that mean that we need to understand all of these configurations? No. Why? Hint, there's an easier technology to use if we're testing for semantics. Right? All of these things are basically talking about not information and relationships, which is very important for TalkBack testing. But what we're hinting at is that TalkBack is so complicated and mastering TalkBack is so complicated that maybe testing these things somewhere else is important, right? Let's keep going on the TalkBack stuff. All right, so Braille keyboard. I am not a Braille user. TalkBack and BrailleBack are related. I don't know Braille well enough to test with this. One of the reasons that I advocate so harshly for sticking to semantic correctness is not everyone can understand how to use every assistive technology. Not everyone can test for every assistive technology. We have to code things for the operating system and the way Android intends. That way we can test with a couple of technologies, we can use a couple of technologies and infer that the rest of them work. I am not familiar with Braille. I am not going to insult Braille users by trying to explain to you what this stuff is. If there is a Braille expert out there who wants to share what these configurations do, I would love to hear from them. Cover proximity sensor to stop speech. If my TalkBack announcement, I'm in a meeting, right? I'm in a meeting, I'm at church, and I am trying to use TalkBack quietly, and then suddenly I get a big long notification from somebody, and I need that to stop. Cover proximity sensor to make everything shut up. Tutorial and help, advanced settings. Advanced settings. I love the configurability of Android. We are just going through what I'm sure all of you think is at least reasonably advanced. I am getting overwhelmed every time I dive into these in detail. I'm like, wow, there's a lot here, and there's a whole nother section of advanced settings. Let's dive into there. All right, so advanced settings. Speak passwords. Privacy is important. So is coding things correctly, right? So when we're talking about whether a password gets spoken or not, don't try and create custom edit text boxes, because if you get this wrong, you're in big trouble. Speak passwords is a configuration related to edit text fields, and whether or not those you're going to announce star 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 star, or whether you're going to announce the actual password that you typed in. In general, this is going to be used by a TalkBack user who has their who has an earpiece in, right? Someone who isn't concerned about the lack of privacy that using TalkBack publicly gives, can put a little earpiece in and have their password spoken out to them. Custom labels. I'm not sure what custom labels does. Import custom labels. Never used it. I don't know what it is. Single tap to activate is really cool. So single tap to activate, I am comfortable using TalkBack in the double tap, all of that stuff. But if you want to enable single tap to activate, this is a great touch to explore feature. You can drag and then release and tap, right? I can see the thing that I am activating. Do you have to, here's the question is, do you have to, Nope. So single tap to activate, basically, if I target the thing that is actionable and I touch inside it, I don't have to do the double tap thing. I can touch to explore, and then I can do a quick tap. It's a little bit faster for users who can do that. Great for testers, right? Great for testers, great for that partially sighted user that maybe is becoming a TalkBack user, that is in the process of their vision heading just a little bit worse. Maybe this intermediary step, instead of that swipe right, swipe left thing, maybe they use this single tap to activate setting. And that speeds up their interaction just a little bit and makes them comfortable becoming a TalkBack single tap to activate user. Element description order. Name, role, value. Here they have a state, name, type name, state, name, type, state. Name, role, value is the W3C WCAG version. One of the things that I advocate for a lot is native mobile accessibility is different in important ways. Name, role, value, state, name, type. The fact that Android picks state, name, type is actually related to that fundamental difference between web and accessibility. Type, state, name, and type are subtly different from name, role, and value. You can change the order in which they're announced. One of the things that we talked about was the idea of how complicated trying to test for properly coded components in TalkBack is. As an Android developer who does not empathize with people with disabilities, I will be tempted to throw state, name, type, value all into a content description. If all of that information is coming from one place, this configuration does not work at all. Right? This is a really important concept. If you are when we get to testing with TalkBack, we will talk about this a lot. If you want to actually do deep tests for the semantic information from TalkBack, this is how you would have to do it. Because if you change the order of this and the announcement of a stateful control does not change, you know that too much of that information was baked into the content description. This here is another like picture trying to do all of that testing. It's nuts. There is so much to do and so much to know about TalkBack. we can configure the order in which those elements come, as long as the developer has coded those elements properly, which I'm going to be honest, doesn't happen super often. There are terribly few super accessible applications out there where using these configurations will result in experiences that the users that appreciate those configurations expect. But you can change the name, you can change the order of that information to the order that you like. I leave it on default. Typing and keyboard preference. Typing preference, hold finger to select letter key, then lift, double tap for other keys. Okay, so if I am a TalkBack user and I want to type a message, this double tap thing all the time on a keyboard key that I use all the time is going to be painful. So instead of that double tap thing, what I do is I drag my finger and release, right? So when I hear that I am on the H, I release, the H is typed. Much faster for typing. Most TalkBack users leave that configuration the way it is. Keyboard shortcuts. There are TalkBack users that use a keyboard along with TalkBack. Same thing here, very similar configurations. This is not a keyboard thing, and there are all sorts of configurations in here. I am not going to talk about all of them. Keyboard TalkBack users and just TalkBack users are different enough where I don't like to group them together. So I'm going to ignore that one. We're almost done. We are almost done. Developer settings. Okay, so developer settings, we have display speech output. That's the thing that's giving me this little toast at the bottom. Crazy useful for testing, crazy useful for presentations. Echo recognize speech. Don't know what that does. Reduce window announcement delay. There in the Android ecosystem, there's this concept of different windows. You could actually have multiple windows on the screen at a time. I think maybe that's loosely related to modal dialogues, although I haven't played around as much with the Windows stuff, and I don't like saying technical things that I don't know are 100% accurate. So I am going to leave this one alone, but I know it's related to Android's activity window system and how various multiple windows interact, and when windows pop up on the screen, what their titles are. That's some loose information. The deep technical information I am not as confident about. And like I said, I don't like sharing technical information that's not 100% accurate. Enable performance statistics. Let's see. I haven't played with this one before. Some of these configurations are new. One of the things that's a theme in the native mobile ecosystem is the idea that new stuff is coming out all the time. And from a technical perspective, keeping up with all of that new stuff is honestly impossible. I do my best. I know there's a bunch of other people out there that do our best. We keep in contact in various Slack channels and stuff, and we try and keep each other informed. But a lot of the times it's like, no, I use that, and that's really cool. Here's what it does. And then you learn something new. In native mobile accessibility and in accessibility in general, if you aren't relatively constantly learning something new, you're falling behind. All right, so enable performance statistics. Are you sure you want to turn on performance statistics? No, I'm not sure. Maybe Google about that one. Explore by touch. Explore by touch, I think, is going to, yeah, that's the thing. I do not want to turn that off. That's the thing that allows me to do that touch to explore gesture. As a developer, disabling explore by touch can be convenient for testing. Forcing myself to do that swipe right, swipe left type of interaction is very healthy for me. And what can happen is if you are performing those gestures is difficult. You really have to make that swipe really nice and flicky. Otherwise, you accidentally do a touch to explore gesture. There you go. Accidentally doing a touch to explore gesture damages the testing process, because the touch to explore user and the swipe right, swipe left user are different users. And as an engineer, it's easy for me to accidentally put focus on something directly, which means that I didn't get there with my swipe right, swipe left gestures, which means I didn't do the testing that I thought I was doing, which can lead to all sorts of icky blockerish mistakes on accident. Enable node tree debugging, I've never had any help with. In fact, built an entire product at one point to account for the fact that node tree debugging is not super helpful. Log level, output level, not super useful. Filter accessibility, event logging, useful if you are doing super advanced inspection of programming your accessibility delegates. Although, to be honest, in practice, I build my own filters for those into code, and I don't rely on here. I want all of those events coming at me. I want to copy that information into a text editor, and I want to delete the stuff that I don't care about, or I want to filter that out in Logcat or in some other mechanism. I don't want to, heaven forbid, accidentally leave some filters on my event log for when I'm testing something else and not realize that this setting is the thing that is keeping me from finding whatever bug I have in whatever accessibility delegate I am developing. I'm going to guarantee that most engineers haven't run into that. Most engineers aren't even familiar with the power of the accessibility delegate APIs, and I will get into that in another video and maybe use this configuration just to kind of show you what it does. Although, to be honest, like I said, I really prefer to leave that one alone. I picture that being probably, for honestly, the Android engineer who was building TalkBack, and he left it in there because it is a convenience for certain engineers who want to program and do that stuff in their own way. Again, part of the whole Android ecosystem is this idea of supporting different people and the different ways that they want to do things. And I mean, I just took you through what I think is now a 45-minute almost video of configuring one assistive technology. It's nuts, the configurations that exist on the Android platform. And back to the overall idea of being accessible and coding accessibly for the platform, there is no way to properly support all of those configurations without having a little bit of a consideration for Android and their intent for their platform. And you hear me every once in a while be critical of Google and the decisions that they make here. One of the challenges of native mobile accessibility is maybe they had a good reason for those decisions that even somebody like myself, who has been following along with those decisions for a long time, I don't know why they made that choice. Sometimes those are subjective design things. There are subjective design things, even within the accessibility layer, that are part of the art. Maybe my interpretation of the art and their interpretation of the art is different. That's what I think happened in this case. They are trying to keep these separate. They only have 5 or 6 targets on here anyway. Still a very simple application from a not AAA Android accessibility perspective. That decision is pretty meaningless. And so when we're talking about TalkBack users, designing for TalkBack users, building for TalkBack users, building for Android accessibility in general, we need to set aside the art a little bit and consider Android's intent for their platform, because if we don't, all of these ridiculous number of settings that we talked about are things that we are for sure not supporting as well as we could be supporting them. As Android content creators, we need to respect the flexibility of the platform at all layers, including what TalkBack, which is an amazingly configurable assistive technology. That is all I had for you today. That is all. That was a lot. Introduction to TalkBack. There's a ton to TalkBack. It's an amazing assistive technology. Android gets a bad rap compared to Google, but Android's users are the people that thrive on that configurability, that appreciate all of that stuff. And the fact that all of that stuff is in there, I think is awesome. And it's one of the reasons that I enjoy coding for the Android ecosystem. There's a certain challenge in supporting all of those things and coding your views in a way that allows all of those configurations to work harmoniously. Finally, contact me if you have any comments or want to chat accessibility. Reach out. If you have an idea for a video you'd like to see, comment, reach out to me, start a conversation. I'm available in all sorts of social networking platforms. Interested in feedback on setting up that Patreon account still. If more content is something you all want, let me know. The general subscribe and click like and all of that leads to support for accessibility, whether it's me in creating more of this content or whatever that all leads to. I just love hearing from you all and love talking to you all. And this video is here for learning, and because I like helping people. I like sharing my knowledge. If you need anything, let me know. Look me up on LinkedIn, Twitter, or email. All of those are chriscm2006 with the email is chriscm2006@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and sorry if this one got a little long. TalkBack is complicated and awesome. Have a good day.